All right, guys, I promised y'all I'd make this video, so here we go. We got the Cat 305 Next Gen excavator and a Fecon brush mulcher. I don't remember the number on the brush mulcher. It is, here's the plate, if you can see that. It's a FMX 36 EXCFC. Max hydraulic pressure 4,000 psi. Weight 850 pounds. So this little Fecon mulcher was actually designed, well, it wasn't totally designed for a Yanmar, but it came from a Yanmar dealer and it was supposed to fit a Yanmar excavator, but it actually fits right on a Cat. The pins are the same. I tested all the hydraulic flows on the excavator. They're within spec for the machine. There is one thing that is very important about this thing that I learned when I was test flowing everything. I had the mulcher running at wide open throttle, or the machine's at wide open throttle, so the mulcher was running as fast as it would go. And they wanted to know, or they wanted you to check how much pressure that the machine keeps to the mulcher once you shut off the hydraulics to it. It has to stay above 30 psi, 30 to 50 psi, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was 30. If not, it was 50. But when you cut it off, it has to stay above that to keep oil pressure in the bearing for the motor to keep it from messing the bearing up. Well, I figured out that as long as that thing's spinning, even with the hydraulics for the attachment turned off, you know, and it's spooling down, if you flip this up, you lose oil pressure to it. If you keep it down, you keep oil pressure to it. So it's very important, once you cut the mulcher off and you get ready to exit the machine, that you wait till it completely stops spinning before you flip this hydraulic lock up. I know it don't make any sense. I don't know what changes about it, but as soon as you do that, you lose oil pressure to the motor in that thing, and that's not good for it. So I have to keep this down at all times. Even if I have the mulcher off, it's still got to stay down until it stops spinning. And I would recommend anybody with this same setup to do the same. So I'm going to crank the machine and get it warmed up. It also says to not operate the hydraulics to the mulcher until the hydraulics are fully warmed up, or it could cause damage. So we'll go ahead and get it warmed up, and then we'll put it to use. All right, so I'm at the place where I want to start doing some mulching. All this stuff here, and then all the way down through there, all this stuff eventually is going to be taken out. But there's some trees in there that are humongous, so this little mulcher ain't going to be able to do anything with something like that. But all this underbrush and stuff underneath, and the smaller trees and the smaller brush, I can work on a little bit with this mulcher. And we're going to try it out here, so it's a good place to try it out. So the only thing there is left to do is get started. Just taking a look at these teeth. Some of them, we've used it a little bit. Some of them's hit a rock or two, so they're not brand new anymore. But they are reversible, so that's good. You can get double life out of them that way. So, well, let's get started. All right, getting kind of a over the shoulder look here from the right side of my shoulder. And one out on the boom. Well, let's start this thing up. Now there's a continuous flow mode right here that I can set to where it'll stay on continuously. But there's one thing wrong with the continuous flow mode. You still have to turn it off every time you want to move, because it takes priority. The hydraulics on the mulcher have priority, and it takes away all the hydraulics. Not all the hydraulics, but I'd say 95% of the hydraulics from the tracks and the boom raise function. It'll just barely raise once you stick this thing out. You can see it eats that small stuff up, no problem. The bigger stuff, well, it's not a big mulcher. It does all right, but not the best. See, I just had to kick it off. Now I turned it back on. Kicked it off to move. Turned it back on to mulch. So you kind of have to get in the rhythm. You have to turn it on, mulch, cut it off, and move. I mean, that's kind of how it has to work. See, that's as fast as it'll go with the mulcher on. That's all it'll do. And sometimes when you're on a hillside, it won't even do that. As you can see, it loves briars. And it'll just chew up briars like nothing. All right, I just turned off the mulcher so I can move. And we got an old dead tree right here. It's pretty good size, but I could probably mulch some of it. Now, if I don't know what I'm doing, that's because I don't know what I'm doing. You guys that run these things all the time, I'm sure I'm doing it wrong, but I've probably got 30 minutes experience with a mulcher head. So now, when you're doing something big like this, you kind of have to do mulch and then wait for the speed of the head to come back up, and then you can mulch some more. You can't just continuously go with it. It just don't have enough hydraulic power to do that on this machine. This machine puts out 22 gallons per minute, and this mulching head can actually handle up to 40 gallons a minute if you have a machine that can do that. So as you can see, it's kind of slow mulching up something this size. So it's not really meant to do stuff like this. It's meant for small brush is what it's meant for. Oop, there was a rock. But it did make that part of the tree disappear. So there's a bunch of small brush right in here. I'll work my way in there and we can see what it does on that. Some limbs and stuff. So I'll kick off the mulcher so I can move around. I'm going to turn and drive myself down in here where there's a little pile of brush. I'm going to put my blade down for stability and then turn the mulcher back on. It handles stuff like this absolutely no problem. Should take this little limb out, no problem. Yeah. It's like running a big weed eater. Swing it back and forth. All them limbs are basically gone now. So I'm going to cut it off so I can move around. I'll wiggle my way in here a little further. Turn it back on. So you could take a limb off a tree kind of like this. If you want to do that, you can do that. And you can mulch it up. It'll go downhill okay with it running. Just don't like to go uphill too good. Oh, stalled it out. Fresh maple there. With all that flow going to the hydraulics for that mulcher, it don't operate the same either. Like, you don't have as fine a control over the hydraulics with it running. So it's easier to drop it into the ground and stuff. It has its pluses and minuses here. You gotta remember, this isn't a very big machine to be running something like this on. You're running at half the hydraulic flow as a skid steer. Some of these big skid steers put out, you know, they'll put out upwards 40, 42 gallons a minute. They'll run a bigger mulching head, get more done, and have more power. But it can't reach up as good as something like this can, or reach over a bank. So I was thinking about getting that limb down right there. Let's see if it'll do it. There we go. Cut it off, move around, and I'll see if I can mulch this up. I wanted to throw it back up here towards the tree so I can get a different angle. That field that's right beside of me, or up above me and below me, is straw, or it's rye that I'm going to harvest for straw, so I don't want to throw a bunch of chips out in there. Well, most of that limb is gone. Couple of little pieces right here. So here's a little tree. Thought I'd take it down. I mean, it's going to come down anyway out of this fence line. So let's see what it'll do to it. It'll barely raise up like that with it running. I still got it running full speed. Trying to get set up here how I want to be. I don't want it to fall on me. That's probably what it's going to try to do. There we go. Now let's see if we can bring it down. Pretty good sized tree. Sucked me into it there that time. So this tree is probably a little bit more than this little machine would like to handle, but I wanted to do something like this so y'all could see what it was capable of doing. And I don't have any experience with the mulcher head. Got plenty of experience with the excavator, but the mulching head is completely new to me. So who knows if I'm operating it correctly. Down here near the bottom, this tree's a good foot in diameter. They didn't give a spec on, you know, what size you could do with this machine. And I guess it doesn't really matter what size it is. It just depends on how much time you want to spend on it. I don't recommend using it on something this big, but you can. Bound and determined to get this tree all the way down to the stump. Pretty hard. The farther I go down, the harder it is. Now they say you can take this thing and grind your stump all the way down under the ground with it, but and you can. It just takes time. I'm going to put it down flush with the ground anyway, so I can drive over it. About as far as I'm going with it. Thing's hard. This is what it's meant for right here, more, more so is the brush. It'll eat brush up pretty good. And yes, it is trying to snow on me a little bit. I ain't calling for much, but it is snowing just slightly. Get down here where I can chomp this brush up a little bit. It's in the field. Ah! Somebody turned the snow on. Jeez. More like sleet. It ain't really snow. Takes limbs off the trees pretty good. Like I say, it's stuffed right here in front of me. The small stuff and the brush, it eats that stuff right up. So if you was trying to reach over a bank or something and clean up a bank, and you got a bunch of growed up junk on it, briars and bushes and saplings, I can see where this thing would really shine doing that. But if you're going to try to clear acres of land, this thing is not ideal for that. Trying to take down bigger trees and stuff like that, it's not going to be feasible. But cleaning up around the edge of the woods like this, cleaning and cutting limbs back and stuff like that, it's pretty good for that stuff. A great old big locust tree right there to the left. I know some of you probably seen those big machines with mulchers, big excavators, and they just come right down on these little trees and not even slow down. But this one ain't like that. This is a small machine, so it has to take little niblet bites. It's got hard. It's got hard right there. It don't want to cut that at all. Yep, I throwed some stuff out in my field. I have to get out there and clean it up. Push this thing up in the woods so when I chop it up, it's not in the field. So it eats the small stuff up like crazy, but when you get into this stuff right here, you really just can't do it. You just can't handle it. So that's kind of the gist of it, y'all. I mean, you could sit here and chomp something like this up. It's gonna take you a while. It's gonna take you a while. That's all there is to it. And I ain't gonna sit here all day and chomp it up. I'd rather get something, move it out of the way, and throw it in the woods somewhere. We did get this thing a really good deal, so for what it cost, it does pretty good. I think ones that go on skid steer loaders and stuff are $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. We got this one for $12,000. The place that we bought it from had bought a whole lot of them. I mean, I don't know how many he bought, but he bought a bunch of them, and he was able to get a good deal on them. And we was able to get one of them. We wasn't actually out looking to buy one. It's just that guy mentioned something to my dad about having some, bought a bunch of them, and he had 2 left, I think it was, and for $12,000. So we got one of them. But for something like this right here, man, it really eats that stuff up. It don't like the bigger stuff so well. If you put it on a bigger machine with more flow, it would probably do a little better. But I don't think you're going to find many excavators this size that have much more flow than 22 gallons a minute on the auxiliary ports. We have a Komatsu that's the same size as this machine, and it only puts out about 13 gallons on the auxiliary port, 13 gallons per minute. That's pretty weak. And the machine is really slow. I mean, as far as the arm and the boom and stuff, it's always been really slow. This machine's a lot faster than the Komatsu. Of course, the Komatsu is an older machine. It's probably like a 2010, 8 or 10. So we've had it a long time, and it's been a good machine. It's got almost 3,000 hours on it last time I looked. And but it's slow. It ain't as good as this cat as far as speed and agility and stuff. Ain't near as nice as this cat either. As far as technology. And I don't know that Komatsu's changed anything much. You know, they seem to keep the same exact everything forever. They don't change anything for years and years. I ain't looked at a mini excavator from Komatsu in a few years, but last time I looked, they were basically exactly like the one that we have from years ago. No different instrument clusters, no cameras. I mean, this one's got very nice instrument cluster, camera built in. I mean, it's got everything that you could want in a mini excavator. When you look back up through there, we've done a pretty good job cleaning it up. I mean, I'm just doing half of it because it's 50 foot wide or whatever, and I can't reach the whole thing. But if you came back down the other side, when you got this side done, you'd have it all cleaned up under the trees pretty good. And I'll tell you something else this works good for, is making ATV trails. I was using this to make an ATV trail the other day. That's how I broke it in, and that worked really good. Now the only thing you can't do when you're doing this, using this, making an ATV trail is if you need to move some dirt to like level up a spot that's too steep for your ATV or something, you can't do that when you got this mulcher on, but you can get all the brush and the briars and the down tree limbs and small trees that are in the way. You can just get them, mulch them right up. They're gone. And they're not piled up beside your trail or whatever. Anything that's rotten that you touch with this thing just explodes like that. So you got stuff that's down and it's rotten, it ain't no problem to get rid of. I should be going the other way, so I'm not throwing all this stuff out in my straw field. But, oh well. This small, briary, viney stuff, man, it just tears it up. See, it's fun to watch it throw all that stuff out like that, and that rotten limb just throws that stuff right out like it ain't nothing. Throw that stuff back out of my straw field. Bust it up where it won't bother nothing. It'll rot, if possible. Jeez, throw that piece way out there. That's what happens when you hit a rock. Smoke goes a-flying. I hate vines. Jeez. I don't know that I can get on any of them. If I can do anything with these limbs up here much, but I'm trying. I wish you could reverse it so you could throw it the other way if you needed to, but then it would have to have chain guards on both sides, and then it wouldn't work as good, I would guess. Trees whacking me everywhere. See if we can get rid of a few of them limbs. Seems like if you can get the limb busted up, it'll mulch up better. I mean, I guess that makes sense. To mulch up something that's busted up easier than something that's really solid. Got here keeps hitting me in the back. Trying to knock some of that back. I have to turn on the air conditioner or something. It's starting to get foggy in here. Too much hot air in here, I reckon. All right, so my inside camera says it's had enough. My outside camera's still going, so I'll go a little bit longer. One good thing about this thing is you can take your limbs down as you go, and you can clean up along the edge of the woods as you go, whereas like the limb saws, you can't mow the sides of the woods. And then with the bush hog type on the excavator, you can take down some limbs, but it does okay with the limbs, as long as they ain't real big. Which this thing can't take, you can't do real big limbs either. I would compare this thing pretty close to like a diamond brush mower on an excavator, but it may work a little better than that. We have one that goes on that Komatsu, and it works pretty good. Kind of like this thing. It's pretty similar. You ain't gonna break no speed records doing this stuff. This is kind of a specialized thing, you know. It's for reaching over banks, for reaching up in trees. It ain't for clearing big acreage, and it ain't gonna clear big acreage. It's just ain't to it. Ain't got enough. Ain't enough to it to do it. That's all right. Here comes the snow again. We made pretty good time coming down through here. We've covered a lot of ground, mowing underneath the trees and stuff, and we mowed a few limbs off, and one big tree down, and one smaller tree down. We ain't even been at it an hour yet, so we're doing pretty good. I gotta get all this stuff out of my field though, because if there's anything I don't like about my Massey Ferguson square baler is it won't bale trees. You know, everything I've tried to bale with, out of everything I've baled with it, it does pretty good till you try to bale trees, and it just won't do it. All right, well, I'm pretty happy with what we've got done. Looks a lot better. I mean, look up through there. That looks a whole lot better. If you went down the other side, it'd look great. But I ain't gonna do that on camera, and I ain't gonna do it right now because I got other things I gotta do. So, oh, I almost broke my own rule. do not turn the lock off, turn the hydraulic lock on. Do not pull the lock lever until it quits spinning. Now you're supposed to be able to stick it in the ground or into a piece of wood to help it stop spinning. Now you can pull the lock lever safely. So even I have trouble remembering to do that. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed the video of the brush mulcher. I know y'all want to see that, so I enjoyed making the video for y'all, and we'll see y'all on the next one.